Call the meeting to order. Please stand for a Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please silence all your cell phones. Take a moment of silent prayer, please. We'll begin this morning with a roll call, starting with Commissioner Mike Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Jeff Culberson's here. Doug Smith.
Here.
Mike Stevens.
Here.
Vicki Cos.
Here.
All present and accounted for. Public comment. I have Steve Vernon signed up for public comment. Come on up, Steve, and give your name and address for the record.
Good morning. My name is Steve Vernon. I live at 18500 206th Street, Tonganoxie, and I know Tonganoxie ain't got 206 streets, but anyway. I don't know if anybody bothered to read the document that I submitted. Basically, what I'm calling it is a saga or a case study of the Highland Meadows plat versus Leavenworth County comp plan. In watching the discussion at the Planning Commission, it took approximately 3 minutes with no questions to approve this plat. When considered on the 27th of December of last year, Commissioner Stephen asked 2 questions, and within 5 minutes of the meeting, the plat was approved without further discussion. Rural Water District 6, supports this new plat. Currently, there are approximately 220 homes that are on Rural Water District 6, with the 35 homes and 5 fire hydrants that are going to be applied to that particular subdivision when it's completed would amount to a 20% increase in the demand on the water that's coming from Rural Water District 6. Also considering that, there is some consternation that I, as a private citizen, had a hard time trying to find out about the size of the pipe from the well on the Kansas River that supplies Rural Water District 6, the size of the pipe coming out, and the size of the pipe that is actually going to the various homes that are going to be located in this new subdivision. The primary route to this new subdivision is K16. I do not know how many of the commissioners have driven up Hubble Hill on K16 going west of Tonganoxie. I cannot think of a rougher place, a place where the highway is in worse condition in Leavenworth County for K16, other than where it goes up Hubble Hill just west of Tonganoxie. There are numerous potholes there. There's actually on the southern lane heading west out of Tonganoxie that many individuals prefer to be on the northbound lane as opposed to southern lane because of a dip in the road at that particular location. With this new subdivision that's going in, you can look at tons of concrete, tons of lumber, and many more vehicles going up K16 to that new subdivision. Commissioner Stephen, I know the rest of you have also heard about the problems with K16 construction that took place near Helen's Hilltop and the traffic problems that caused on the gravel road, George Road.
Oh, no, we didn't hear about that one.
Didn't hear about that one? Okay. Furthermore, K16 going up Hubble Hill, just west of Tonganoxie, has no drainage. There's a 5 to 10 foot drop off going up to the cutout, and the cutout there is up to a 10 foot bluff on both sides of the road with no drainage on either side of the road.
Thanks for your comment, Steve. Can you finish
Sir?
Thank you for your comment, but your time's up. Can you finish up real quick?
Okay, I'm sorry. Also, if you take a look at the plat, or the Leavenworth County Comp Plan, on page 86, there is a picture of ponds that are to be associated with the various new subdivisions that are going in. Okay. With this subdivision, you're actually draining 3 ponds, and the only notes that are associated with the submission of the plat were the environmental conditions of the pond, and I'm sorry I exceeded my time.
Hey, Steve, could you get together after the meeting or call Bill Knoll and we'll get these places reported? Those are KDOT repairs that need to be made.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there any other public comment from anybody in the room? I don't have anybody else signed up. So we'll move on to administrative business. Mr. Lothry or Mr. Van Paris?
Aaron.
Have Aaron up first on courthouse repair.
Yeah.
Morning, Aaron.
Morning.
Commissioners, just to give you a brief update, and I want Aaron to come up here because he's working on this. We've received proposals from, what's the company name?
Campbell and Trainer HL.
Campbell and Trainer HL. And we're working through the agreement, the legal contract with them for the inspection of the building. That's not the repairs. But Aaron, I think we're just under $80,000 total just for the actual inspection and the sounding. That's not the repairs. That's just them to come out and do the full inspection of the building and then give us a work plan going forward. And they have to have a company on site, Mid-Continent, with their lifts so that they can get up and adequately do that. So I just kind of want to touch base with you and let you know that's happening. As soon as we have legal approval of the language in those two contracts, we're going to get those signed and get moving on this. As we've told you before, this is emergency repairs, so we're trying to do this in all haste, but they obviously need time to make sure it's done correctly.
And Commissioners, a revision to the proposed documentation has been forwarded to Trainer Architects, so as soon as they anticipate approving that, I believe Mr. Lothry has authority to sign the documents to initiate that process.
It is what it is. Not a lot you can do about it.
Any questions for Aaron or I on that?
I have one question for Aaron, not specific to that, but am I correct that this was a developing problem on the building, but when we had the extreme weather, that accentuated it and kind of...
Developing problem, yes. As you start, as a building ages, and the fact that sometime before my time and pretty much almost everybody here, they did a coating on the outside of that terracotta. I don't know if it's a paint coating or what kind of coating, but terracotta is one of those structures that it needs to be able to leach the water out, and the coating that they put on that upper part, if you look at it, you can see it peeling, and that it traps the water in. Well, if it traps moisture in there, then that terracotta doesn't wick it out, any that you get on that cornice, and then it starts freeze thaw and expansion, and you start getting cracking, and then you have what we had happen. Yes, sir.
So when we had the extreme cold, that really brought it out.
Yes, sir. When you fluctuate 40 to 60 degrees in one day, yes.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Thanks, Aaron. Is that all you had on that, Mr. Lothry?
For the courthouse repairs, yeah.
Okay. You have is there any more discussion on the courthouse repair?
So the other item on there is the Mid-America Regional Council staff is here. I think I noticed them in there.
Come on down.
Yep, come on down.
You done with the administrative business?
They're in it.
Oh, they're in it.
Yeah, discussion on Mid-America.
I had one time.
Okay.
Welcome, gentlemen.
I'll get you as soon as they're done.
Actually have a couple of handouts of the
Sure.
approach. So I should have these collated.
Thank you. Oh, two of them. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
How are we doing? Thank you, sir.
Good morning, thank you. Well, thanks.
Well, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, I'm David Warm. I'm the Executive Director of the Mid-America Regional Council, and I'm here this morning with Ron Epperpool, who you all know, our Director of Transportation and Environment. And I want to thank you for inviting us to be here today to talk about the process that we go through in administering transportation funding for improvements in the region through the Mid-America Regional Council. Before I begin, I just want to thank this commission generally for your active involvement in regional affairs, and in Mark in particular. Chairman Culberson, Commissioner Smith have been active, engaged, positive members, and appreciate your participation. We understand that the core concern that this commission has is whether the criteria that we use to evaluate transportation projects at MARC sufficiently allows for projects that you're concerned about in this county to be competitive through our allocation process. And so what we want to do is kind of take a step back from that and sort of look at our overall process, how it works, and then to talk with you your specific experience and then some ways that this county can put its best foot forward in competing in that process. I will say, sort of as a contextual matter, that this is not a new issue. These issues do come up from time to time all over the region. The criteria that we use to evaluate projects on the front end are not set by Ron and me. They're set partly by the parameters that we're given through federal and state authorities, but then largely by the local governments that come together and set parameters based upon goals and objectives that the region comes to. We do look at them from time to time. In fact, just recently we went through our processes and reevaluated how we evaluate rural bridges, and we've created a different kind of category for evaluating that. And so perhaps this discussion today will lead to some further conversations about how we do other kinds of improvements. But having said that, even with the criteria we have in place, there are a lot of projects and investments in this county that we think can compete very effectively. And a part of what we want to do today is talk a little bit about how to position those to be most successful through the competitive processes at MARC. So with that, I'm going to ask Ron to kind of go through the material that's in front of you, and then we'll be available to interact with you for as much time as you want to give this particular issue. But again, thank you for engaging us in this conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us out. So the two handouts I passed around, the first one is really an overview, just in general terms, of MARC's role in programming the federal funds that come to the Kansas City area, and then really some tips for how jurisdictions that have been really successful in those processes approach those. So I'll just start at the top here. That we've been designated as the Metropolitan Planning Organization for the Kansas City area, which includes Leavenworth County. I was actually doing some research for another project yesterday since 1974. So that role is not new for MARC, and Leavenworth County's participation in that isn't new either. So this means that for at least 4 different federal programs: the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program, the Set-Aside Program within that, which used to be called Transportation Alternatives, the Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Program, and a new Carbon Reduction Program as part of the new bipartisan infrastructure law. A portion of those funds in Kansas are suballocated to the Kansas City area based on the population within our urbanized area. These are all competitive programs, so the way that MARC approaches this is that we call for projects. Local governments and other eligible project sponsors will prepare applications and submit them to us. The staff will review those, share those, which includes scoring in the projects. We share those scores with the project sponsors and provide an opportunity for either additional information that our staff may have missed in evaluating them, or an opportunity to discuss the scores and make adjustments to them, and that's a frequent part of the process. Before we share them with the committees, and then the committees that oversee these funds actually use that as part of the information that they use to make their decisions about which projects to recommend funding and at what level. As David said, the criteria that we use to evaluate those projects are developed really by the committees themselves, and so it's really one of the tips that we've got, and one of the things that you all have been very, very good about is participating in those processes, making sure that your concerns are heard as the scoring criteria is developed, as the goals and objectives of the transportation plan that also an important framing document for these applications are developed as well. So right now, Mark is in the process of updating the region's long-range transportation plan called Connected KC 2050. We have a public survey out right now that's trying to get some more information from the public about how they value different goals and objectives for transportation investments, including things like safety and system condition and congestion and how transportation projects impact the environment. That will probably impact future scoring rounds. Right now, we're working off of the adopted plan from 2020 that guides our scoring processes. So that's a lot of background detail about how we develop those criteria. The tips on the second side of this sheet are really, I think, where I wanted to focus this morning. Mark provides a lot of information to applicants about the regional plans and processes and data that's been developed to help support the development of your application. So it's really important as we do these calls for projects that the folks that are preparing applications review that information and take advantage of it, ask questions about Mark if they have questions about it. Communication. So our staff is happy to talk with you as you're developing your applications for funding. We're happy to answer questions about the evaluation criteria, how to best frame the project ideas that you want to present in the context of the goals and objectives that we have in the plan. We really encourage leveraging local plans, and I got to applaud Leavenworth County and the cities in the county for the recent adoption of the Priorities for Project plan that I think it's really a remarkable piece of work. It provided a lot of good information about how to frame projects for KDOT's statewide processes as well as for Mark's processes in the Kansas City area. You're also working on a Safe Streets for All planning process, and that will provide a lot of good information for projects as well. So I really encourage leveraging the planning work that you've done as a community. It's really important to complete applications. We often will see applications that are submitted that have left questions unanswered in them, and it's very difficult to score those when there's no information provided for those. So that's a really important piece of the process. And if you or your staff have questions about how to fill out a question in our application process, give us a call. We're happy to help sort that out. Already stressed the importance of coming down to Mark meetings and being present, or even being virtual at the meetings as part of those discussions. And a lot of project sponsors have not been successful the first time or even the second time that they've submitted an application, but being persistent does help. We've seen recent examples. Miami County was a jurisdiction that joined Mark most recently and joined the planning area most recently. It took them, I think, 3 cycles before they were able to get their project funded, and we worked with them to improve their scores on that every time. And one way to help with that is a program that we have called Planning Sustainable Places that provides matching funds for local plans that focus on transportation projects, how they relate to land use in communities. That's been an outstanding program. We've seen a lot of communities, Baser in particular, see some strong success by working through that process to develop a project and then bring it through the Mark funding process. So this year we're doing 2 related calls for projects, the big sub-allocated funding call for all 4 of the programs that I just mentioned. Those applications, the first round applications, are due April 5th, so they're coming up. That will set off a process that will be reviewing those initial applications against the policy frameworks in the transportation plan, providing feedback to the project sponsors, and a big part of that is how to best position them for the second phase of the call for projects, which will happen later on in the summer in June with the technical applications that will be due. We're also going to be doing another call for Planning Sustainable Places projects in May. And so that's something that I really urge you to take a look at. In fact, in your priorities for project, I keep messing up the name of that. I'm so sorry. Priorities for Progress plan. It actually identifies a couple of key studies that you might want to pursue through that program here at MARC. So I could stop and take questions, or I could also, we provided kind of a programming history for Leavenworth County jurisdictions with specific detail about Leavenworth County applications that have been submitted through MARC. Just walking through this, since 2018, which is the first programming round that really used the criteria that we use now for evaluating those projects. BACR, as most folks know, we were fortunate to attend the groundbreaking for a key project there and applied for a couple of projects that were very successful, fairly large awards as well, including improvements on a county roadway on 155th Street. Most other Leavenworth area jurisdictions have not applied in that period, so that's an important point. Leavenworth County did apply in 2018 and 2020, and the projects were not funded there. We saw scores increase from the 2018 round to the 2020 round, and we certainly encourage you to keep at it and apply again. We've identified on this sheet some of the projects that you've applied for in the past that are still part of your countywide plan that we'd encourage you to keep considering. I've also got information about the former TAP program, the set-aside program. Once again, BACR's been successful in competing for funds there. Most other jurisdictions in the county haven't applied for those funds in that time period. And Leavenworth County, again, did apply for a project but was not successful there. The Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Program, these funds are allocated by state policy to the metro area, and they're really only available in the former air quality boundary, which unfortunately doesn't include Leavenworth County. But the new carbon reduction program, which was, as I said, is brand new. We just did a round of programming for that last year. Leavenworth is eligible to apply for those funds, and we will be taking applications for 4 years of that new program. And then on the Planning Sustainable Places program, every jurisdiction in Leavenworth County that has applied for funding in the past has received their grants, and so we certainly encourage you to continue to pursue that. And then in this handout, I also did attach the kind of summary conclusions of Priorities for Progress that lists the projects that were identified in that plan as good candidates to compete through the MARC process. So with that, I'd be happy to take a breath and answer any questions I can about the information that we've presented today.
Does anybody on the board or staff have any questions for Ron up to this point?
I got a lot of questions, but I'll ask you a couple just to get started. What percent of funding for MARC comes from the state of Kansas and the state of Missouri? That's basically
for these different programs. The split is roughly 60-40. For these programs, we keep the Kansas and Missouri money separate. So there's never a case where a project that's applied in Missouri is eligible to receive projects in Kansas. There are occasions where we have bi-state projects that will receive a Kansas portion and a Missouri portion. Those are frankly sort of unusual, but we do draw a really hard line at the state line and keep the KDOT and MoDOT funds separate.
So 60% is coming from Missouri,
right,
and 40% for Kansas. And in dollar terms, how much is that?
So for this round, I think because of some peculiarities in how MoDOT is asking us to manage the funds on that side of the state line, we're going to probably program more money than usual on the Missouri side. So I think we're looking at somewhere around $100 million total on the Missouri side and somewhere closer to $50 million on the Kansas side for this round.
And last year when you awarded the awards that you made for various projects, what percent, do you have percentages by county?
I don't have those off the top of my head, but I can provide that to you. We do
Okay. I have more, but we'll go on.
Okay.
Ron, is there like 10 or 15 boxes we have to check for like parks, trail studies, autonomous cars study, freight study, stuff like that?
So there are, in the applications, this was true for the recent application you all filled out for the transportation plan, and it's also true for these sub-allocated funds. We do provide places for you to indicate if your project includes elements that relate to a wide range of strategies in the transportation plan. Also, if you have done local planning that may not be reflected in our regional plans, we provide an opportunity for you to tell us about that as well, and that can also help with the scoring of projects.
So, I mean, like one of our projects, you got down here the 235th project. I mean, there's no way we could do all them studies on that. I think, I mean, to me, we should be encouraging, like what Baser's doing. The city of Baser's been very successful in getting these applications in and grants. Perhaps our other cities should, take after Baser and be applying for them. And that, it still helps the county now. So, but I just don't know if we can.
We do try to provide information on our website and link to that in the applications that points you in directions where you can see information Mark may have already assembled about traffic crashes. We have a lot of different data available on our website that is really relevant to filling out these applications.
So you're saying you guys may have that information if it's an environmental, like a Clean Air Act,
right,
or a clean air study in our area, and that's nothing we wouldn't have to do.
In many cases, that's correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I know that's an issue that's come up with our public works director is, in larger jurisdictions, they have lots of money to do all these studies. In order to qualify for some of these monies, you have to have this study on hand and this study on hand and this study on hand. But in a smaller, more rural or ex-urban county, it's difficult for us to be able to do. I mean, we've done the transportation study, and that cost. I mean, these are very costly studies. So I would think one part of this would be if your board or consideration would be to the smaller and jurisdictions or in counties to help us out with some of these studies, because you're requiring these for us to get a high score, and if we can't do these studies because we can't afford it, it's a problem.
I understand the concern. I think what I would recommend is as you're filling out the applications and you encounter a section where it looks like you may not have the information to answer it, give us a call and we'll talk through what information we have that might be able to fill in that for you. In a lot of cases, we'll have some. Not all the time, but in a lot of cases, we will. And I just want to stress that our perception is that we don't require local governments to do a lot of advanced planning to fill these out. The ones that do may have a leg up because they have completed the work, but it's not a requirement.
Which gives a built-in advantage to a Jackson County or to a Johnson County that has enormous valuation and resources compared to a Leavenworth County.
And I think what's even more important than that is the ones that can't afford to do these studies. And I appreciate, gentlemen, y'all coming today. Good to see you, Ms. Warren. I haven't seen you in years. That they're probably more need than these larger counties because they have the funds to be able to do this some on their own. But if we're not being able to check the box, for not a better way to call it, check the box, then we're getting left out of that competition. I'm glad you came here and said what I was glad to hear that you said we can call you and there may be some information that you have. That's very proactive for me to hear that too, because I guess my concern is going to be, being the Lansing mayor for years, being the Lansing city administrator for years, very successful back then getting grants. It just seemed like the counties, or in this case, this county has a lot of hoops they got to jump through
before we become eligible. And we're just asking, is there an easier way, or is there an assistance, which you just gave us, which I appreciate that, to be able to complete these and be eligible for some of these funds?
I'd also like to stress that we put a lot of emphasis on the scores. We put a lot of work into developing. You all put a lot of work into filling out the application so we can create those. But those are just part of the information that the committees use to make their decision. And it's very typical. Actually, about every time that we do this process, there are projects in jurisdictions that are small jurisdictions without a lot of resources. The project may not have scored well, but it's still a priority, and the committee still recommends them for funding. That happens almost every single time. It's better to have a high score when you go into the process, but it's also really important to be at the meetings and speak up when the opportunity presents itself to really explain why the project is a priority locally. And the Kansas and Missouri STP committees that award most of the funding have been very sympathetic to that in the past. So I would say that it certainly is better if you can walk in with a high scoring project at the outset, but it's not the end of the discussion.
We don't mind them being sympathetic. We just want the funding. But I appreciate that comment. You've made me aware of a couple things I wasn't aware of.
And I think that's exactly, the reason that we asked you to come today was, first off, I want to say, we really appreciate Mark, without you guys helping us with the GIS, addressing 911, dispatch, aerial photography. I mean, there's a lot of other things Mark does, for the county that saves us a lot of money.
Absolutely.
But when it comes to roads and bridge projects, one thing I noticed is the scoring process is basically throwing everybody in one basket. And you get the score you get based on all this criteria that we just simply can't afford to do or doesn't apply to us. For instance, the clean air program, I noticed you don't count Leavenworth County because it had to be part of the former ozone non-attainment area. It seems to me that Miami and Leavenworth counties, I don't know about the Missouri side, should really help your score, on something like that. But when it comes to road and bridge projects, a lot of these boxes that you're talking about, we just simply can't check off. It almost seems like cities or people that have more money automatically get a higher score than Leavenworth County. So we're just wondering if maybe should there be two separate scoring procedures, one for counties or one for less dollar amount areas or population areas or something? Because when you're competing against everybody, we're at a disadvantage on a lot of things.
So, as David said, we did work with both the STP committees this year, formed a work group to look at that question, and the work group at both committees did end up making recommendations about changes to the bridge category. You all have submitted bridges in the past as well.
Yeah.
That we think will help rural bridge projects. The committees did not pursue adjusting scores for other roadway projects, and so that's as David said, that's not.
And for instance, like say if we're working on a bridge project and it called for a scoring criteria of biking trails or walking trails on that bridge project, we don't have any county parks or county walking trails or county bike trails, so we automatically miss out on those points. So
the criteria was adjusted to address that.
Okay.
A lot of those relate to some of the environmental criteria that we had have in the scoring methodology, and that part of the score was actually reduced, and the part related more to system condition, which is more of what you're trying to do with the bridge replacement, was elevated. So that's a change that they did make.
Okay. That's what I think we're trying to get.
So the state of Kansas is doing this Apex locating the Panasonic plant, and there's going to be a lot of ancillary industries that are coming in. There's going to be a lot of jobs. There's going to be a lot of people. There's going to be a need for a lot of infrastructure. And we've communicated this to KDOT as how this is going to impact our infrastructure in southern Leavenworth County, which is the fastest growing part of the county. To So it's going to impact us. It's going to impact our schools. It's going to impact our roads. It's going to impact our bridges. We have 2 bridges on Golden Road that the state is helping us with some grant monies to replace. We said, you want people to be able to travel, but you don't want these roads to fail. So with your scoring criteria and with your committees, have you taken into account what's happening down in DeSoto and adjusted your scoring towards the impact of that to the region and to the counties in this area?
I think this programming cycle this year will really be the first time we've taken applications since the announcement's been made. The answer to your question about specific scoring criteria, no, that's not been adjusted specifically to relate to the Panasonic plant. But large industrial developments like that, we've seen those in other parts of the region in the past, and a lot of the things that will drive scores for projects anyway, things about workforce access, freight access, those are going to be important to the work around the Panasonic plant as well, and that's something that sponsors that are proposing projects that will address that development would need to tell us about in the application.
And this document that was reviewed and I guess was voted on, the Priority Climate Action Plan, how does it, when you talk about these 4 funding pieces of the pie, how does this impact or influence that funding?
So that the priority plan was just adopted recently. It really did not impact the scoring for this cycle. What it says about transportation kind of improvements is really long-standing policy at MARC. It's things that support alternative transportation, bicycling, pedestrians, public transportation. Those are really not new ideas, and those are the emphasis in the priority climate plan. And that is designed to drive a whole separate process, separate funding through the Environmental Protection Agency rather than through the DOT funding.
So that doesn't impact this carbon mitigation funding?
So the requirements for the carbon mitigation program were developed. As I said, it's a new program in the bipartisan law that's really focused on carbon emissions. We developed criteria for that last year in response to the requirements in that program.
So this will be actually a 5th funding layer that will be coming in then?
If we're successful in submitting and receiving an award through the EPA, the intent there would be to then set up other processes to take applications for funding through that program.
Okay, and I did talk to Mrs. Lawson, and I don't know if she works for you or about the transportation, and one thing I noted was on rail, this was very heavy on hiking and trails, but I didn't see anything basically on passenger rail. I didn't see anything about extending light rail out to the airport. I didn't see anything in here about that, and I was a little confused because that seems to me like that is, if you're a person focused on climate, that's low impact transportation on our climate. So can you tell me why that didn't end up as more of a higher priority in this document?
Sure. I think the main reason for that is because the time frame that we're focused on in that plan is really near term, and a light rail project or rail projects will just take more time to develop than the 3 to 5 year horizon that we're looking at in that climate.
Now, the state of Kansas got a award to extend the Heartland Flyer to Newton,
That's
Kansas,
right.
and part of what's being looked at is extending that from Newton up to Kansas City with a couple more additional trains. That seems to me like that ought to be something Mark is at least interested in.
Yeah, we have in fact supported that extension and spoken out on it. It's in a separate policy context than the document that you're looking at.
But isn't that one of the boxes to check, the KCI airport transit thing to check off? Isn't that on part of our
I don't.
Seems like I've seen something like that.
There is the regional smart moves transit
All right.
plan.
I thought it was under
Yeah,
transit plans, KCI Airport
Yeah,
study.
we recently completed a study
Yeah.
that was looking at bus access, transportation access, and where there was a market for it to the new terminal.
Right.
And we've
Mr.
identified
Culbertson's got a bridge he'd like to have that fit that plan.
Have you heard about that one?
Yeah, we haven't.
I think everybody's heard about that one, yeah. But I'm just saying that could be part of the KCI Airport transit plan.
Exactly.
Well, the Transit Authority is looking at those issues as well.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
On this environmental plan, one thing I noticed was there's some acronyms that are defined at the beginning, but you don't define the terms. And so there's some terms in there: environmental justice, resilience, equitable and green workforce, inclusion, economic prosperity, high performance buildings, global covenant of mayors. If just a layman reads through this document, and we don't have definition of that, and there's no definition of terms, you'd have to Google it. We'd have to try to research what all those mean. So it seems like to me that that's a flaw in that document. And
That's fair feedback. Thank you.
you know,
Just have to come to the meetings.
well, that's true. They're probably recorded, aren't they?
Do you have anything else, Mike?
I do. On page 9 of this document, you say it talks about the MARC Climate Action Team originally focused on developing a plan that was at least compatible with the Paris Agreement, meaning that the Regional Climate Action Plan would strive to meet a target of 80% GHG reduction from the 2005 levels. And then at another location it says the Global Covenant of Mayors, which is based in the ICLEI Greenhouse Gas Protocol. I think people are concerned that we're using documents like this to kind of push an agenda from the federal government on us, and that it disadvantages, and this is sort of the argument, it disadvantages our industries. It potentially disadvantages our industry and our people, and that's one reason why our nation pulled out of the Paris Agreement for a time. And we're very concerned if we make our electric rates double or triple, how can we bring industry into this country? It may be green to have an electric car, but you got to plug it in, and that power has to come from somewhere. So I think there's some concern about some of what we're doing here, and I just think you ought to hear that from some of the folks.
Well, I appreciate that. That particular plan will enable the region to apply for funding, which we're getting ready to do. And most of that funding will go for things that this county and others are already doing, things like energy improvements, things like figuring out where EV charging stations are going to go, and other kinds of improvements. And those are optional for you to pursue or not to pursue. And so I know that there's probably a lot of policy variation about whether that's good policy or not policy, but it's a lot of money, and there are a lot of local jurisdictions in this region that want to access that money.
And that's the bipartisan infrastructure bill?
A portion of it
is coming through that.
Is going through the EPA, and the EPA is administering a program called the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant.
Well, I think people just should, we have people watching these meetings,
Yeah.
They should know that your federal government is pushing an agenda on the folks, and the agenda is we want electric vehicles, we don't want to have gas-powered cars. We want to phase that all out, But I think the problem is you got to plug the electric cars in. And where's that power coming from? So it's just a critique. I know you can't do anything about it, but I think it's worthy of being discussed.
Fair enough. The energy efficiencies will enable us to create more capacity with the existing power generation system to be able to provide those opportunities for growth in the electric vehicle market. Again, these are huge policy conversations that are worthy of differences to be discussed. The opportunity that's in front of this region at the moment is that there is money that is going to be spent. And there are a lot of local governments in this region that would like to have access to those funds.
And so, we would like to have access to those funds without having to kowtow to an agenda.
Well,
the funds are available for energy improvements and other associated improvements that are your choice to pursue or not.
So, but it is mandated according to this document.
Unfortunately, that's kind of the way things work.
It is. But it doesn't mean we can't say something about it.
Well.
So bottom line, I think, is we just wanted to point out that there's some boxes we realize we're not going to be able to check in your application process, and so if there's any way you could help us out and figure out a better way we can handle that. Or
fair enough, though. But I also would say that if, and the reason Ron went through those criteria, I really encourage you that as you set your priorities for what you want to submit for transportation projects, to ask your staff, which they're good at doing, I know they met just last week, to sit down with our staff and say, how can we put our best foot forward?
Yeah.
And even when projects don't score at the very highest, they can get funded. And so but at the same time, from time to time, we need to review these criteria as we just did to see whether they are unfairly leaving parts of the region out. And there was an adjustment made for bridges. There may be further adjustments that are warranted.
There's also ways of wording things in such a way that you can meet some of those requirements that perhaps,
Absolutely.
As a past grant writer, I know that there are ways of looking at what your funder is trying to accomplish and how to word things in such a way that you can get there.
And our staff can help with that process.
Right.
And we appreciate that. That's important, that we can have our staff talk to your staff and coordinate.
Sounds good. Bill or Mark, did you have anything you want
If I could, just briefly. First, I just want to recognize that we do receive a benefit from being members of the American Regional Council.
Absolutely we do.
And regardless of these grants that we haven't gotten or haven't done well on, there is a big benefit for Leavenworth County, as witnessed, and next on our agenda is awarding funds to BACR, that they received a lot of funding to that too. So it's our communities do better, and I think that's what the message that I was trying to get to you when we talked about this last time is our communities do better on these scoring criteria than we can. A lot of what's designed, I believe anyways, that there's the urban core, and a lot of this is targeted towards the urban core, and it should be because that's where all the people live and where all the money is. Our projects that are out towards the middle of the county are just not going to include some of the things that allow us to score well. That doesn't mean they're not good projects. It just means they're not going to score well with some of the hike and bike trails. We're not including hike and bike trails on our roads out in the towards the middle of the county, but in the cities they absolutely can do that, like BACR did, and score well. So I don't want there to be this message that we don't think we're getting a good value out of Mid-America Regional Council, because we absolutely do. We just need to acknowledge that some of our projects at the county aren't going to score as highly because we don't include some of those items. And in the handout you had today, I just noticed that it says on Parallel Road, changed some of the language, but it says there's much needed bicycle and pedestrian facilities. Well, we don't typically include those in our projects, so that's just another kind of an example. But that, again, we appreciate what Mid-America Regional Council does, and our projects that Bill submits for grant funding do very well at the state level and very well at the federal level. It's just at the Mid-America Regional Council, which is why it's a little frustrating, because some of the projects that we have that we know score well elsewhere don't down there. So it's frustrating, but it's not that we don't understand why. We know why, and we get it, and we really would like to see more of the communities in our county apply for these, and I think your handout really shows Basser is the only city that's actually even applying. And we would encourage the other cities because their projects will score better. And again, thank you guys for coming. Appreciate what you do.
Yes, we do.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Good seeing you,
That was
David.
my point earlier. I think we have a city that
But even
should
just-
be applying for
right.
like industrial park.
But even to say the cities, I mean, we are at a disadvantage, and I circle around again, but we have our tax base, our ability to match, even at the cities, of the different cities. You have to come up with the financial resources to provide a match. And when as a county, and there's only a handful of counties across the state who struggle the way Leavenworth County does, and that is because 40% of the properties within Leavenworth County are tax exempt, property tax exempt, and some sales tax exempt. And so it makes it very difficult for even our cities to have the capacity to apply for some of the funding because they cannot come up with the match. That's just a...
And that would maybe be a scoring criteria suggestion that when you look at the counties and figure out what percentage of the counties are tax exempt. For example, we got St. Mary's College, we got the military base, we got the VA. We have a lot of exempted property here that other counties have higher valuation because they don't have so much exempted properties. And I think maybe on a scoring criteria that should be taken into account.
Definitely could take a look at that.
I just think that's something that always we need to remind, not only people like the regional council, just in general, the public to understand when we say, well, the cities need to apply for this. Fortunately, and hats off to Basser, the growth that has occurred in Basser has enabled them, and then along with, because we had ARPA funds, the pandemic did bless some people in some ways that others were not. But that because, the county stepped in and helped with some of the match that was required, Basser was able to move forward with a project that they may not have been able to apply for and be awarded. And so I think that it's important for us to always remind ourselves and each other and our communities that there are reasons that some of these grants are not applied for because the capacity is not there. That's just... And it is what it is. So,
Thank you, gentlemen.
thank you. But we really appreciate what Mark does for our county, and
Absolutely.
we enjoy having the representation that we have going to the meetings there.
I appreciate you taking your time to come down
We
and talk to us.
absolutely do.
And I hope you took it in a spirit of we're family. But that's we just want you to know. You need a little feedback.
It's a complicated region, and
Yeah.
the viewpoints you brought forward today are relevant and need to be a part of our process. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming.
I'll just give
I've got 4 or 5 extra copies I can leave behind.
There you go.
And Doug, did you have something else for administrative business?
Yeah, I didn't know if commissioners had a chance to watch the comprehensive plan work session on last Wednesday night.
I started to watch it a couple times.
The whole
Didn't make
thing
it all
was
through it.
part of it.
Yeah, me too. I heard there was some excitement, so I was trying to.
I mean, I just had some concerns about some of the comments the chairman made.
I just think we probably need to schedule a work session and just kind of talk through some of the understanding what the process was when we did have the comprehensive plan.
With the planning board?
Well, because,
think that's
there's
a good
members
idea,
of that
'cause they've
planning
changed
board,
over.
they've changed over.
Yeah.
I think Mr. Rosenthal and maybe one other were the only, no,
He's it.
I think he's the only one that
Was on there when we did
was
the
on there when
comprehensive
we
plan.
did the comprehensive plan. So I think it's really important that we sit down and kind of talk through what the process was at that time and what was
'Cause
done.
I think there was a lot of things that weren't actually factual that was said by the chairman.
I think that's a good idea. So the consensus of the board to set up a work session with the planning board?
I think that would be a good.
John, you may want to watch it too. Your paper got trash talked in it.
I just think that we need to make sure that we
Can you set that up, Mark?
work
First of
quite
all,
well with
commissioners,
We have a quarterly,
Before-
don't we?
What's that?
Don't we have a quarterly meeting with them always?
Well, I think before we schedule any meetings, we need to have an agenda. I always ask for that because I think we've seen in the past
Right.
that meetings without agendas have a tendency to go nowhere.
Which is
So
why I was saying just to
if
have
you
an
have an agenda that
overview.
you would like to have a meeting with them, I'd be
Well, I
happy
think
to
it's about how the
discuss it.
comp plan was done.
Right,
And all the
overview
meetings
of-
that were held.
Of the comp plan and
And all the public notices that were made.
I think the comp plan is moving forward. I think that was a work session.
Review.
We don't have it here tonight, but
Right.
today. But I think that was their first work session on the comp plan. It will be coming to you, and I think that it'd be good to schedule something so
Jumping
that
off
you,
point,
before
yeah.
they move anything forward, you have
Yeah.
a chance to talk to them just about the
Right.
comp
Need
plan.
work
I
session next
agree.
month.
I
I
agree.
can set
Next
something
month
up for
before
that.
the planning commission.
Because, for instance, I think it was said that the commissioners just picked the comprehensive plan that we have. I think that was said in the meeting.
Yeah, we paid all that money on the County Road 1 corridor,
And
and
then
we did whatever we
to.
wanted. We
Yeah.
didn't follow it.
And I think that comes from most of the board wasn't here when we did the comprehensive plan. And I don't think
I
they might have
was.
read the chapter in the comprehensive plan that talks about how we came up with the plan itself. There's one whole chapter that talks about the 18 months we spent having soirees, what they call them, soirettes?
Yeah.
Charette.
Charrettes.
Yeah.
Charrettes.
At schools and libraries. and
Soirees is a
community
different
centers.
thing.
We had,
Close enough.
Right.
we spent 18 months
Yeah.
polling everybody what
Well,
they
well,
wanted,
the
and we
comment-
let them pick the comprehensive plan. All we did was facilitate what they wanted with what we got.
I think I watched that meeting, the first part of it especially, and there were two discussions. There's two different items. One, there was the County Road 1 corridor plan, which was separate from the comp plan, and it was done in a similar process, though, with multiple public hearings, multiple public notices, and a hard rezoning. And then when you do a hard rezoning, you have to notify the property owners via mail, and we did. And that was adopted. That was the plan that was submitted. I believe they submitted two different alternatives.
B.
Yes.
A and B.
But the county
why I
selected
got
it.
to be
We
a
didn't
commissioner
amend
early.
it. It was selected on the County Route 1. On the comp plan, it was a working process, and again, took 18 months, had multiple charrettes
Sure.
around the
Soirees.
county.
Soirees.
And even at the end of it, scheduled additional charrettes because somebody at that time had made a comment that they didn't think that we'd had one in
Lansing.
In Lansing. So
Yeah.
we scheduled additional ones there. And when we sent out those notifications, again, it was newspaper, website. We had multiple email chains that we used for all of the developers, public officials in the county. Every time, for every one of those, we sent those out, hundreds of notices. But we did not send it out to every resident in the county because that would be about $50,000 per meeting. I think we know that's what a direct mailing cost at a minimum. So we had a long process, and I think it was done appropriately. And then it's a work in progress. Every year you review it, and that's what we're doing now. We're in that review process, and I think this is our third review. Is that right? Are we on the third review of that original comp plan?
And we even asked the contractor, was the results of the people that interacted below average, above average? They said it was completely normal. They said all the ones that they do, we got the response that
Yeah,
that
that's
they
true.
considered.
I've been involved in
And I
that.
believe
good-
the
a good
comment was
response.
made, the commissioners only wanted 5 people to make that decision, and they succeeded.
So
Well, I would point out that we've already reviewed it, and every year, we're reviewing it, every single year. And I think one of you was at that, it was very sparsely attended when they did the review. When they had the public hearing on the review,
Commissioner, I was present through that process, and I'll stand by the comments I made before the planning commission.
and can you verify there was very
The
few?
final meeting is, the commission conducted a series of public hearings, informational meetings. As Mark stated, even when they were completed, you held additional meetings on your own volition. At the time the final comprehensive plan appeared before the then sitting body, I believe 6 individuals appeared, and we had received 1 additional letter, and that was it.
And that was at the end of 18 months.
And that was the initial, but when we reviewed it, we didn't have much attendance either.
One thing I heard, though, and I've done a couple of them out in Lansing, one thing I heard, and I think our planning zone director, John Jacobson, said it, and he's been through quite a few too, is This is for 80-something thousand people. This is not for 10 or 20 people who don't like the way it goes. We had the opportunity. I know we had it in Lansing because I was there. So we had the opportunity to go through them. That's why we do this every year to get this updated. I think my more concern about the Planning Commission is to make sure that they understand what their role is on giving us advice and what they have to look at on that. We update it every year. I don't know what else we can do. We can't walk door to door and hand them out. It becomes an issue that you need to stay in communication with your jurisdiction, no matter where it is, and so you can stay on top of it and be at these meetings. But again, I've been through these before. It's going to happen again. You're going to have 20 people at the most show up trying to speak for 80-something thousand people, and it just doesn't work. If they were so upset with this thing, I guarantee you we'd have to have this meeting at an auditorium somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think we'll spend the next week, each of us getting to mark what we would like on the agenda for a work session, and then have them
Have
put
it
that
right
up after
before
he
the Planning
knows
Commission next month.
whatever works best, and then that way he'll know what we want on the agenda.
sounds like a plan.
I talked to one of my two folks that's on the Planning Commission this week, and I just after watching part of that, and I think there's a little confusion, and this may be something that the planning staff needs to talk about is, character of the neighborhood does not have anything to do with what the people around, what they think. It's about the character of the neighborhood as far as how the geography has changed, how the how things have changed. We cannot make decisions based on how the neighbors feel or the various populations feel. That's not the way that's not character of the neighborhood. And then the second thing is that I've noticed is if it's a land use plan, it's a plan. It doesn't mean that is not a rubber stamp.
Commissioners, your planning staff, I believe, thoroughly and adequately briefs the Planning Commission members on what the golden factors are. That's the criteria that planning and zoning decisions are to be made upon. And I believe the members of the Planning Commission understand that. I think sometimes there's confusion that while input from the public is welcomed and in fact statutorily required, public opinion itself is not a factor for land use decisions. Otherwise, you could have your use, your property, curtailed by the fact that a handful of individuals chooses to think that they have a better idea of how to use that property, even though it's yours.
I think there might be some confusion on that.
Well, we can work through it. That's what the chair is setting up. We can work through that.
That's what we'll do. You guys get your agenda items to mark over this next week, and then
We'll do.
set something up at next meeting. Is there any other administrative business anybody has? If not, we'll move on to the consent agenda. I'll take a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Nothing needs to be removed. I'll begin voting with Commissioner Mike Smith.
Aye.
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 Consent agenda passes. Move on to formal board action. Consider a motion to find that the submitted expenditures from the City of Basehor for the 155th Street project meet the ARPA requirements and authorize disbursement of $2 million ARPA funds to Basehor. I know there's some folks from Basehor here who'd like to say a few words. You guys want to come on up first?
Or you want to do it after? Or you want to do it at Mayor? Mayor, or you want to do it after we vote? Just kidding.
Good seeing you all again. Okay, well, let me get the right one here. Good morning, Commissioners, and please let me begin by expressing my sincere gratitude to the entire Leavenworth Board of County Commissioners for their service to Basehor and the surrounding communities. I have served on the Basehor City Council for the past 16 years in several positions, and I know firsthand the number of requests for support that a board such as you receive. The planned improvements for Basehor's 155th Street are no small project, and once completed will include almost 1.5 miles of new improved sidewalks, turning lanes, and a new roundabout with crosswalks. Without the financial contribution from the Leavenworth Valley Board of County Commissioners, a project of this scale would be near impossible to accomplish. I am very thankful for the special partnership Basehor shares with our county commissioners, and I look forward to continuing to work together as we improve our community. Thank you all again for your support of this project and all for the great things happening in Basehor. We couldn't do this work without you. From the bottom of my heart, from the City Council, the staff, and mainly the citizens of Basehor, we thank you very, very much. It's greatly appreciated. I would like to introduce Councilmember President Ben Sims and Council Lady Sherry Stanford. If it's okay if we approach, we'd like to give you all a coin to the city of Basehor.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sure.
Yes, we're going to hand these out, and then I'm going to let. Okay. Then afterwards, Sherry would like to say a couple words too.
Okay.
So.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, you're up to $4 now. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sure. Thank you.
This isn't going to be like a toll road, is it? We got to use
These are the tokens.
You got to have a coin to get across.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
We actually appreciate all the money that comes from Basehor.
Absolutely.
Keep it coming.
Absolutely.
Congratulations on getting it
Absolutely.
done.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Doug. I wanted to point out
Would like to say
this
something?
is really like an investment in the fastest growing area in our county.
Good morning, Leavenworth County Commissioners. I'm Sherry Stanford with Basehor City Council, and I appreciate your time this morning to say thank you for your financial support to the City of Basehor and the Leavenworth County residents who live, work, shop, and attend school in Basehor. These funds are going to provide financial support for much-needed improvements of our 155th Street corridor. The improvements will provide safety and traffic flow with the installation of sidewalks, curbs, turn and bike lanes, and much more. Again, I just want to say thank you and show my sincere appreciation, not just from myself, but from all the Basehor community. And have a good day and enjoy the second day of spring.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
could I suggest that we get a picture with
Sure.
the folks while they're here?
You can suggest it.
Finally, somebody reacted the correct way. Everybody except Commissioner Stevens.
I'll get a picture.
I'm not standing in front.
Gotta get a little closer.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
There we go.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thanks for coming up.
Oh, thank you.
You know, back in 2015, the former Mayor Brewer told me, he goes, I'll bet you that Basehor will be the largest city in Leavenworth County. He said, it may not be in our lifetime, but it's going to grow so fast. And I thought, man, this guy's crazy.
What year was that?
2015.
Wow, wasn't that long ago.
It wasn't that long ago, and look how the last census on the population is.
And that's the way I look at it, is this is an investment into the fastest growing community in Leavenworth County. So,
As my grandkids would say, y'all got it going on.
Well, and we're going to need a good road to get to that new grocery store.
That's right.
I've been doing some research on that.
Yeah.
And it's a
Yeah.
pretty nice addition to the community as far as what they're going to provide and the
It's unbelievable.
meat selections and stuff like that.
You know, hats off to the staff for going and get that, because I've been involved in bringing things into communities too, and that is not an easy, especially when it's one of the first ones in Kansas or in that area. Staff, y'all, I know some of y'all here, y'all really did an exceptional job on that. So I'm just glad to see what Basehor's got going on. And I think this is Doug's motion.
Oh, that's correct.
Are we
Mr.
going
Chairman.
to table this?
Yeah, we're not going to table this.
I told you, Mayor, you should have waited.
I move make a motion that we found that the submitted expenditures from the city of Basehor for the 155th Street project meet the ARPA requirements and authorize the disbursement of $2 million of ARPA funds to the city of Basehor.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll begin voting with Commissioner Mike Smith.
Absolutely.
Aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very
Congratulations.
much.
Congratulations, guys.
Can I make a quick comment?
Sure.
16 years ago, when I started on city council, we had 3,400 citizens. Now, we're predicted by the end of this year to be up to 8,400. So that's awesome how quick we are growing and everything. So, and a big part of that is the Leslie Rivera and Maddie Waldeck helps us out on everything. So, again, from a lot of my heart, thank you guys very much.
Mayor, one other thing I'd like to say too. Next year when you have your city estate, means something like that, I'm going to do my homework on those questions. Hey, that's great work, folks. Great work.
Thank you guys very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks, for coming up.
Thanks for coming up.
We appreciate the money that comes from Basehor to here.
Sir.
That's exactly what it's all
Absolutely.
about. Moving on to other formal board action. Consider a motion to approve Board Order 2024-3, directing the Director of Public Works to place stop signs on county roads as needed in accordance with the manual on uniform traffic control devices. Lauren.
Morning, Commissioners. So the board order before you is fairly straightforward. It delegates authority to the Public Works Director to place the stop signs in certain locations and on county roads, so long as the placement complies with the MUTCD and doesn't require an engineering study. Right now, I think every stop sign placement is coming before you, and this should simplify the process, but you will still see some stop sign placements.
Oh, I just don't want to see this turn into a county commissioner going down and bugging Bill because a constituent wants a stop sign. But that's just me personally from having to deal with that stuff for over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Or four-way stop. They want every intersection to be an all-way stop.
Oh, I asked for a yield sign one time.
That'd be a lot of signs.
It'd be a lot of signs.
I think you can trust that your Director of Public Works would just say no if it is not appropriate under the MUTCD.
Okay, let's adopt that slogan, Bill. Just say no.
I think I've heard that before.
Didn't work with the drugs, so maybe it'll work with stop signs.
I asked for a yield at, what was it, 158th Street and that little Y at the 4H Road.
Did you get one?
Yes, but but I went through the proper channels to do it.
Yeah, there is channels to go through.
But-
Oh, there is a proper channel.
Yeah.
That's right.
But I did do it the right way.
Did you have anything else, Misty?
No, that's definitely a policy decision and the Commission's choice.
I make a motion to approve Board Order 2024-3, directing the Director of Public Works to place stop signs on county roads as needed in accordance with the manual of the uniform traffic control devices.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll begin voting with Commissioner Mike Smith.
Aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0.
I almost forgot us, Vicki.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Misty.
Any further formal board actions? I don't have anything else. We'll go on to presentations and discussion items before we.
I just had the really enjoyed the Basehor City, the state of the city. I think very well done. I always like to tour the cities in the county, even though I represent Lansing, which is doing good things too. But I always like to represent, and I'm very impressed down there. Also got to ride with three of my other county commissioners. We would not let Mike Stephen ride with us at the St. Patrick's Parade.
I heard about
and
it.
really,
I heard about
and that was pretty well done. And I appreciate everybody for the turnout. That was a good time. Just kidding, Mike. That's all I had.
I don't really have anything this week. Attended a climate meeting twice, same meeting twice from Mid-America Regional Council folks. And then we had the parade.
Yeah.
That's all I have, Doug. You have
That's all I
something?
had was state of the city,
Yeah.
Basher, and parade.
Mike, do you have anything?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah,
I went Meals on Wheelsing yesterday with Georgia.
Yeah, I got that tomorrow.
So, and it was fun, and I really got to learn about her love for cats. And also attended the Taxation Committee meeting yesterday and testified on behalf of the constitutional amendment. And it went well. We'll just see what they do.
Good deal.
Yeah, I forgot. So I provided written testimony for that same
He was
meeting.
supposed to be there.
Yeah. And I had a tree fall on the roof, so I didn't make it. And then we also did the Meals on Wheels. Has everybody done that but Mike now, right?
I did.
I've got it tomorrow. I've done it the last 3 years, but I got it tomorrow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did Meals on Wheels last Thursday, and let's see, I also attended a special meeting for the Kansas, Transit Authority on Friday, the parade on Sunday. I had the Port Authority, whatever day that was. Yesterday, the Port Authority, and then a Finance Committee meeting for the Kansas City Area Transit Authority, and the Workforce Partnership Board of Directors meeting. Well, not Board of Directors, CEO meeting that I attended yesterday, and the City Commission meeting last evening. And let's see, tomorrow I have the NECAP Board of Directors meeting tomorrow evening and the Emergency Food and Shelter Program meeting tomorrow afternoon.
How long was the Leavenworth City meeting last night?
Till 7, it was about 7:20 when we finished.
Every time I go, it's 15 minutes. She goes, it was 2 hours.
Well, it was a good meeting, though. They gave an update on the Big Brothers and Big Sisters program, which has really been extremely successful. Far more, it has exceeded expectations, and they announced Sister Vicky's retirement.
Oh, really?
Yes, and so Sister Amy will be taking over the affordable housing, attainable housing organization.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
But
She's been around forever.
and Sister Amy she grew up, was born and raised in Leavenworth, and has come back. So that's kind of a cool
good.
thing.
That's
So,
cool.
yep, that's all I have.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second.
Aye.
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 Meeting is adjourned.